going to do is talk a little bit about the election. Our lobbyist, Marge Clark, is going to talk about the overall changes in Congress and what happened there. And then our Common Good Project election coordinator, Katie Vieta, is going to talk a little bit about, I think most of you should have been aware of the collaborative projects that we did, Catholics Vote for the Common Good, and the platforms. She'll talk a little bit about that. Shannon, our education coordinator, will talk about the power shift that we're starting to see in this, what happened in the election. And then we'll switch a little bit to talk about the lame duck session that's coming up in Congress. We're going to have a lot going on there, and again, Marge Clark, our lobbyist, will start the conversation on that. And then Simone and a couple other staff are going to talk about the 3 projects that Network has going forward that'll be going on during the lame duck and the next Congress. And then we'll talk a little bit about the Catholic vote and Catholics in this election and going forward, and then see if we have other questions at that point. So I think Sister Simone Campbell of Nuns on the Bus fame and Network Executive Director will give us some opening remarks.
Well, it's great to have everybody on the phone this afternoon. I have to confess that I had a serious knot in my stomach all day yesterday, and it was a real worry that money was going to triumph over the people. And I think one of the things that I've been really heartened by is that in the end it's the people that have the vote, and that it's we the people that are the ones who can be, it's only we the people that can vote and to make the difference going forward. We see many opportunities, and I think so many of you that have been on the call have been so supportive of the work of Nuns on the Bus, of lifting up our issues, of caring for people who live and struggle every day, especially the working poor in our society, and having the solidarity around that issue and being able to lift that up for the public to witness. I think we've done a historic thing in helping to shape this election. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And while we can't toast champagne through the connection here, know that I have bubbles in my heart, as it were, to just really say thank you for lifting up the mission that we share together. So now I'm going to turn it over to Marge to give you some details about changes in Congress and some of the new experiences that we're going to have for ourselves. Marge.
Okay, thanks, Simone. Hi, everybody. Over the last few months, as different members of both the House and Senate have been saying that they're going to resign or retire at the end of this session, it really turned out that there were quite a number, about 50 or more people who were resigning or retiring. So I thought, oh, that gives an opening for a lot of change in the House and in the Senate. Well, there are a lot of new faces coming into the House, but the balance is pretty much the same. Last year, the House had 242 Republicans and 193 Democrats, and right now there are still 9 undetermined races, but there are 233 as opposed to 193, which means the number of Democrats has remained the same. It's just different Democrats in many cases. I think one of our hopes is that that some of the things that were blocking what could happen last year may not happen because of some different faces and because of some different places in where we are. In the Senate, the Democrats actually gained 2 seats. There are now 55, which includes the 2 independents who are expected to caucus with the Democrats. And last year there were 53, including the two independents who were caucusing with the Democrats. One of the other things we looked at is it seemed like there were a lot of women being elected. Well, there were, but there were also a number of women who left. In the House, in the 112th, so this right now, there are 78 women. There are 75 confirmed for starting in January, but there are 4 that are still listed too close to call that actually look like the women will win. And actually, in some of those cases, it's a woman running against another woman, so it will be another woman. And in the Senate, there were 17 women in this current Congress, and there were 2 who retired, and there are 4 new women senators, so there'll be 19 for the 113th Congress starting in January. So we're seeing a little bit of a shift, a little bit more activity of women. One of the things I did notice is that there were a lot of women running against women. So whoever would have won, it would have been a woman. So which really says to me that there were a whole lot more women involved in running in this election. And I'm at this point going to throw this open to Katie, who's going to talk a little bit more about how this all fits with the Common Good project that we've been working on, and how that continues.
Thank you, Marge. Actually, I'm going to start first talking about the Catholic vote. Actually, no, does that make sense?
Whichever, just do it.
All right, so a lot of people have been asking how Catholics voted, and so far it looks like the Catholic vote overall went 50% to Barack Obama and 47% to Mitt Romney. But that is a very sketchy picture. So I wanted to break that down for you a little bit. Traditionally, with the Catholic vote, at least in the last 20 years, if you identify as a liberal, as a Catholic, you are most likely to vote Democratic, reliably. In the same way, if you identify as conservative Catholic, you're going to go Republican. So really the swing part of the Catholic vote is going to be the moderate Catholics, and that goes back and forth depending on the election. In this particular election, what was interesting was that while a few months ago, moderate Catholics were saying that they were going to vote for Mitt Romney, President Obama had ended up winning that vote during the election. So that actually changed over the last couple of months, perhaps. Slightly thanks to the nuns on the bus. Anything else? The only other thing to note there is that the last election, President Obama won 54% of the Catholic vote, as opposed to only 50% this time. Those numbers are still not completely solid. It's the day after the election, so we don't really know. But the only other fun thing about that, in the states with the top 10 highest numbers of Catholics, all but Texas and Arizona went to President Obama. Everyone else went to, the only other 2 were Texas and Arizona went to Mitt Romney. So there's that too. So some of you are also asking what you could do now as Catholics after the election, and my answer to that would be to check out our Common Good project. Maybe hopefully a lot of you actually have participated in that. But if you go to www.commongood2012.org, and you can click on your state, and if you want to now go and talk to the people who won in your particular district, you can use your state's platform as an outline as what you'd like to talk about as a Catholic and your priorities. Not only does that tell you what issue areas you can talk about, it also gives you hints as to what legislation is up there. You can talk about Medicaid if that's an issue in your state, and it also gives you quotes from either the catechism or from the bishops to kind of back that and root it in Catholic doctrine. So please, please, please go and check that out and go and talk to people. Thank you. And now we're going to hear from Shannon Hughes, our Network Education Program Coordinator.
Thanks, Katie, and hi to everyone. It's so exciting to be here with you today, and I think just taking kind of what Katie has been talking about, this Catholic vote and the number of women that we saw involved in running for office, we wanted to look at kind of the bigger picture also, and what a moment we had in U.S. history. Yesterday, really, when we saw this gap emerge and a kind of power shift where Network has, throughout its history, stood with those on the margins, those who have sometimes fought extra hard to get their voice heard and have modeled many of our practices on feminism and focused intentionally on dismantling racism and other systems of oppression. And so it was fascinating yesterday to see that despite the fact that Obama actually lost close to 19% of the white vote, it was lower than in 2008, 55% of women and 71% of Hispanic voters went to Obama. And these groups were heard together in this election, and for the first, not the first time, but in a new way, we see a growing space here between a group that traditionally held a lot of power, white men who are making a lot of choices and are leading the Republican Party right now, are not the majority, and they are not unified in the same way that these groups that have so long been on the margins are. And so it's been just so exciting to see these groups come together and really have a chance, and I think, to bring their voice to the table. And so as we look forward to what is coming, how do we use that power, and how do we remember each other as we move forward, seeing that power in ourselves and in the people? And so I think in that vein, I want to pass this back to Marge, who will look at the near future before the far future.
You have to know the phone is being passed down the table. That's why there's a lull.
Okay, here I am again. Well, I think all of you are probably thinking a little bit about the lame duck session, and we here are thinking about the lame duck session a lot. There are a number of things that absolutely have to be dealt with before the end of the year, before December 31st. The biggest of those is really the expiration of not only the Bush tax cuts from 01 and 03, but also some of the expansions that were done on some of the middle-class tax cuts, including the child tax credit and the earned income tax credit, which are very, very helpful in lifting people out of poverty and keeping them out of poverty. Those have to be dealt with one way or another. We're certainly hoping that the middle-class ones are extended, and that will take some action. We know that something has to happen to the 01 and 03 taxes also, but there are a lot of people in Congress and a lot of other people who are militating against those being allowed to expire, and so that's going to be a big fight that's going to go on in the next 6 weeks or so, 6 or 7 weeks on the Hill. One of the things that came up out of the debt crisis back in August of 11 was this notion of a sequestration. That sequestration is scheduled to go into effect January 1. And if it does, what that would mean is an across-the-board cut in every department, with the exception of a few protected things like Medicare, Medicaid, food stamps, and a couple of other high-need programs. But it would be essentially a 9% across-the-board cut. Well, there are lots of people who don't want that to happen, and in reality, it was never intended to be something that would go into effect. It was meant to be like a hammer that was a threat of coming down if they didn't make some other decisions. Well, you might realize that Congress has been somewhat in a deadlock and hasn't come down with many decisions. So we are facing the sequestration. And so lots of groups are looking at alternatives to that and wanting to put something together between now and the end of December to put it off, to avoid it in some way. People who are pro-Pentagon and involved in Pentagon spending are very anxious to keep that budget from being affected because it would be a 9% across-the-board cut. And those of us who deal with people in need would very much like to not have that across-the-board 9% cut across many of the programs that would include WIC, it would include housing vouchers, it would include all kinds of things that people need as a part of the safety net. So nobody wants it to happen, but there are lots of discussions of ways to keep it from happening. You may have heard something about some groups, like a group of 6, a group of 8, the Bowles-Simpson group. They and others are working on alternatives to this. And one of the concerns that we have is that they may come up and decide on a really broad framework, saying, well, we're going to have X amount be the limit that is spent in a particular area, but some committee can work that out later. Or, yeah, we need to do something about revenue, and we're going to say this is the limit of what's going to happen on taxation, but we're not going to say what taxes, we're not going to say if it's what it would be. And so we're very afraid that they may come up with something that's very, very broad and leave it to committees to work out later. And one of the problems there is that what they've been doing then is trying to find ways of saving money that are the easiest to get at. And if you look at the history from the past couple of years in particular, the easiest things to get at are the social needs programs. And so we're very concerned about education, we're very concerned about child care, we're very concerned about housing vouchers, all of those kinds of programs. So what we're pushing for is that whatever framework is developed has some clause on it and would say that certain things have to be protected to a certain degree. And one of the things that we're very worried about is that they say the debt ceiling is likely to be reached in December. Earlier they were saying maybe February or March. However, the government has the opportunity to make some decisions on what bills get paid and what bills don't, in what order. And so they can probably make some good decisions and keep it from becoming a crisis until late February or March. One of the things that we're saying on the Hill when we do visits is that no deal is better than a bad deal. So we would rather not have a deal to avoid sequestration. We'd rather let sequestration go into effect than to have some kind of a bad deal go in. And a bad deal might be something like lowering a tax rate to an unbelievable amount that wouldn't bring in enough revenue. It might be a deal that's a lot of cuts. So we don't want, or it might be something that destroys Medicare or Medicaid, something like that. We don't want those things to go into effect. So we're saying it's better to have no deal than a bad deal because we think some of the things we care most about will be easier to get back in the new Congress after the first of the year. So now I'm going to give you back to Simone.
Great, Marge. And I think just on that point, our no deal is better than a bad deal is sort of the backup strategy so that what we're pushing affirmatively to begin with is we want to make sure that there's reasonable revenue for responsible programs. You may have heard that soundbite once or twice if you've been around the nuns on the bus. But it really is going to be important in the lame duck that we really push this idea of reasonable revenue for responsible programs, and that it's both about tax income and the top tax bracket for those above $250,000 a year income would be taxed. That income over $250,000 would be taxed. Additionally, it's about responsible programs, and that all programs need to be responsible, including Pentagon programs. And so I think when we do lobby visits, it's a great thing to say that the safety net programs are the most responsible programs, they're the most accountable, they're the most reviewed, but that Pentagon programs seem to be missing that same level of accountability. We believe that everyone should be treated the same when it comes to programs. So Pentagon programs need to be accountable, and we need to weed out waste, fraud, and abuse in that setting. So that's going to be an important message going forward. As we look at the big programs that Network's going to work on beyond lame duck, sometimes it's hard when we've got all this hot stuff happening up on the Hill to remember there is a longer-term view. We're very grateful for all of the education work and the prep work that we're doing. One of the key issues that many of you, I understand from Ashley, have been emailing in about is immigration, and where does immigration stand at this point? As Marge pointed out, the Congress, while the faces may have changed, the makeup didn't change so much. So we have serious work before us. Now, the administration has said that immigration is one of their key agenda items going forward, but one of the challenges is to see whether or not we can bring along some of the Republican representatives and senators to help make this happen. And it will be really important that we do that. We do know, as Shannon was saying, that the Hispanic vote and the other immigrant communities' vote was significant in this election. And if there's an interest on the part of both parties in working with this community, then immigration has a really good chance. While not being partisan, There may be a question on the part of one party whether or not they want to work with this particular population of folks. But we at Network are going to do our best to lift this up, make it a hot issue, and to hold some folks' feet to the fire in a nonviolent way, of course. But it is our effort to make this happen. We also have 3 additional programs that we're going to be working on, and Shannon's going to talk about the first one, which is our Faithful Budget. Shannon, over to you.
Thanks so much. So, the Faithful Budget is something that you also may have heard a little bit about already. Our Reasonable Revenue for Responsible Programs is the tagline for this 55-page document. And what has become evident to us is that while people are excited about that message, it's really important that we break that open and talk about what it means to really, as a person of faith, stand for reasonable revenues and look at what kind of tax system we have in our country. So moving forward into the new year, we'll be building workshops and training trainers around the country to lead their own communities in conversations about taxes and really talk about what that means and put it in the frame of our values, because it's something that is so essential, as you've heard from Marge, and as we all know, the economy is central to people's thinking. And so when we talk about our faith, it's important to really tackle that first piece of taxes and how we can be responsible in moving together. So as we move into that workshop phase and moving and traveling, certainly be in touch if you think that you have are in charge of a community or are near a community that would benefit from being key spokespeople for talking about reasonable revenues and responsible programs together in the context of our faith. And then I'll hand it over to Ellen for the second project, which is Mend the Gap.
Thanks. So last year, Network launched our Mind the Gap campaign to talk about this huge wealth gap we have in the U.S. and both how it came into being and some of its consequences. So how it impacts our well-being as well as how it impacts our democracy. And as part of this campaign, we developed a workshop that is both a presentation and a facilitator's guide that you can actually access on our website. And we've also been going around and doing this workshop with different groups, school groups, church groups, lots of different people. So if this is something that you think one of the groups you're involved in would like to see, we can definitely still come out and do that workshop for you. Building off of that, we're going to be launching our Mend the Gap campaign in July of next year. And it's going to focus on 4 key areas on how we can start to shrink that wealth gap in the U.S. And these areas are asset building, labor, housing, and taxes. Online, we're going to have self-guided resources that kind of walk you through these areas, how they're related to the wealth gap, but also what are some key policy options in each area that will help us mend the gap. So there'll be lots of great information, interviews with different experts on these issues, and links to great resources. And I'll also be writing blog posts for the campaign. They're going to highlight how current news items or pieces of legislation fit in. So we'll definitely want you to hopefully interact with that blog and comment on it as well. So just in summary, let us know if you want us to do a Mind the Gap workshop for you, and keep an eye out for Mend the Gap next year. And now I'm going to turn it over to Mary Ellen for our Medicaid expansion project.
Hello, everyone. I know you join me when I say woohoo and go God today. Yay. I'm asked to speak with you today about our Medicaid expansion program, and we're actually expanding the Nuns on the Bus to include just another important piece of legislation or program that will enable people to live as God intended them to live. And the Medicaid expansion program that we've started, or that some people have already started and we want to help you continue it, is to govern basically what, let me start over. As you know, the ACA, and it was supposedly mandated the increase of Medicaid to 100 to 133% of the federal poverty level. After the Supreme Court case, that was allowed. It wasn't deemed unconstitutional, but it could no longer be mandated to states. And since that verdict was handed down, many states have said that they will not increase the Medicaid to 133% of the federal poverty level. This presents problems for the implementation of the ACA, as well as the people who fell into that gap will not be insured as of 2014 because there was no other alternative made for them. So this is going to be particularly problematic for the people who are childless and make between 100 and 133%, because they really aren't accounted for anymore with this new ruling from the Supreme Court. So because of that, what we'd like to do and what we're asking everybody to do is join the Nuns on the Bus in another way. We're asking you to become aware of the problem, become more informed about Medicaid and the Medicaid expansion issues, and we're asking you to take that information, form teams, and be willing to go to your governor and lobby for the expansion in your state. And in the event that you do get that confirmation from your governor, and we hope that you all will, that we would ask you just to continue your lobby efforts with your congressional people so that the funding for the program continues. And the last thing that we would ask is just that you use your social media to blast any information or anything that is positive or that is negative that we can use to persuade people, or use it or reflect it in such a way that it will persuade more governors or more people to get involved in this project. So it's kind of a simple program. It's pretty finite, and it would be perfect if everybody would just agree to learn the messaging, lobby your governor, lobby your congressional leaders, and then social media blitz afterwards. And we would help you. We will give you the state information here. We do have a toolkit on our website now. Ellen and I are running the program, and we would ask that you fill out the form that's on the website. Let us know if you're willing to participate, and we will help you with any type of lobbying issues, any type of making appointments with your governor, state-specific information. We just need people to jump on board the bus again and help us out with this. Thank you so much. I'm going to hand it over now to Ashley Wilson.
Hi, everyone. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, we've been getting a lot of questions both before the election and now in the hours since about the Catholic vote. And Katie touched on it a little bit, what looks like happened yesterday. I'm just going to share a little bit of information. The Public Religion Research Institute and Brookings together did a 2012 American Values survey that focused on how Catholics and the religiously unaffiliated will shape the 2012 election and beyond. And they presented that data about 2 weeks ago. And it was really some of the things that I just thought were really interesting from that are information that's important for us to keep in mind moving forward, is just a few different points about religious identity and Catholicism in a political landscape. So most interesting to me, 31.4% of Americans identify that they were raised as Catholic, and only 22% of Americans now identify as Catholic in adulthood. That being said, also, 7% of Americans say that they were raised as religiously unaffiliated, and now 18.6% of people say that they are religiously unaffiliated in adulthood. An interesting thing to note about that, and what we've been finding with Nuns on the Bus, is that there really is a hunger in terms of your faith belief, and while some people are identifying as religiously unaffiliated, that category is largely unattached, unaffiliated believers. So people who are still people of faith that are really just looking for and I thought it was interesting that as you looked at Catholics, who were one of the fastest shrinking groups in the American religious landscape, they identified that Catholics were asked which issue they thought was more important for the church's public priorities, and those were broken down into two different categories. Right-to-life issues, which said that the church should focus more on abortion and right-to-life issues, even if it means focusing less on social justice and the obligation to help the poor, and then on social justice issues, which is that the church should focus public policy statements on social justice and the obligation to help the poor, even if it means focusing less on right-to-life issues. And what this survey found is that 60% of Catholics said that social justice was more important, and 31% of Catholics said right-to-life issues were more important. And then it was also interesting to look at the breakdown. Catholics who favored Obama, 60% of those social justice 60% of Catholics who favored Obama were those so-called social justice Catholics, where 37% were those who prioritized right-to-life issues. And then looking at Catholics who favored Mitt Romney, 27% of Catholics who favored Mitt Romney identified as more of the social justice Catholic, and 67% were the right-to-life Catholic. So something for us, I think, that's important to keep in mind is that how do we continue working in a political sphere as a Catholic base that without furthering this divide that can be apparent in the Catholic Church? So Simone is going to touch on that a bit, and everyone here is laughing.
Yeah, everyone's laughing because it's my favorite topic. The amazing piece about Nuns on the Bus, and I don't know if you saw the Religion News Service and NCR and a bunch of other folks are saying one of the big winners of this election cycle in the religious sphere is Nuns on the Bus. And the amazing fact that the Holy Spirit gave us this opportunity to stand up for the 100%. And the fact that we could stand with our bishops in opposition to the Ryan budget and to speak out for the needs of those left at the margins. And some of the things that I have learned over this amazing few months that, quite frankly, are quite exhausting also, is that we need to not be afraid to use our values and our social justice language. One of the great gifts of this year, that it is the 50th anniversary of Vatican II, is that I know I myself have met a lot of folks, and I myself have been starting to reread the Vatican documents. And when you read Church in the Modern World, it is just so uplifting to remember who we are and to be able to cite those documents and claim our heritage, to not be afraid of it. Additionally, I've had to practice in front of a mirror to do this, but to say that I am pro-life, I actually don't know anybody who's anti-life. So I think claiming pro-life, while we can claim the values of that, we can have different political ways of solving the problem, of responding to what we see as things that are not supporting life. But I think we have to be bolder in proclaiming our values and claiming what it does mean to be a person of faith. And I think that one of the hard parts, for me personally, is that I keep wanting, yearning, hungering for a clerical leadership that would support these positions. And if some of the clerical leadership does, but there's a whole bunch that doesn't. But the thing that has come clear to me with Nuns on the Bus is that we're the leaders that people have been waiting for. And because you're on this call, you're a part of that leadership. We are the people of God, and we need to claim that honored role and to lift up those values and to know that together we can make this change. I also experienced on the bus what I describe as walking through the valley of Ezekiel's valley of dry bones, and that our people are so hungry, but it's together that we can nourish each other and create the breath and let God flame up in our lives, to mix our biblical metaphors, but let God flame up in our lives. Let us live in God and live boldly this message that we're called to, because we have an amazing opportunity and an amazing capacity to really make a difference for those who are left out. So join us, stay with us, keep at this, because it's such an important time. We can make a difference. We have made a difference. That's the shocking thing. We made a huge difference in this election, because if you notice, in March, there was no conversation about those who were being left out of our economy. And now it's a piece on the table, thanks to your work, thanks to our work, thanks to all of us working together to really lift up the needs of the folks in our society. So congratulations. But, you know, as Jesus says, because you've been faithful over one, we'll place you over many. So we've got a bit more work to do.
So I think we want to pause for From Katie.
Okay.
She did the commercial early.
A reminder about how you can stay with us and,
Hi, everyone. Just remember, please, if you want to be further involved and you want to refresh your memory over some of the issues, or even if you just want something to take in your hand to go and talk to people with, go to our Common Good website. That's www.commongood2012.org. Your state will be on there. You can print out the PDF. You can look at it just online. But please go. Please check it out. Thanks.
Okay, and then I guess I want to ask Ashley, who's been at the computer here, to see if any other questions came in that we want to address at this point.
One question is, one thing that came up in our connection and now is being asked of us is, how did voter suppression play a role in this election?
And I think our answer is I don't think we know that yet. We talked about that this morning, and we may need to do a little bit more research on that to see if that actually did have an impact.
I think one of the issues that goes back to what Shannon was talking about the inclusion of communities of color making a significant difference. Many of the states had their voter suppression laws suspended for this election, but I think it's going to be really important to see what were the breakdowns of votes in those states, and then to see the impact would be. So I think we're going to have to stay tuned for more information on that one. But I think it's something very critical, especially, can you believe this, as we get ready for 2014.
I think, though, we did see a lot of long lines, so I think a lot of people turned out, and a lot of people voted early, and a lot of people made the effort. So we don't know if voters were suppressed or not. So.
Okay, anything else? Okay, can we open it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me do one thing here and see how many people are on. Okay, we've got 80 people on the call, so I'd like, if you have a burning question, we would like to give you a chance to do that, so you can unmute yourself without me having to unmute everybody. So if you have a question or a comment that you'd like to make at this point, you should be able to press *7 to unmute yourself. Let's see how that works. Anybody want to do that? Or anybody want to give us a little feedback so we know that people are still out there?
Hi, this is, can you hear me? This is Jean Ann from Louisville.
Yeah, hi, Jean.
Hi there.
Hi, congratulations, everybody. My question is, how are people going to work with Mr. Boehmer and Mr. McConnell, who's from my great state of Kentucky?
Very carefully. That's the short answer. I think one of the things that I'm keenly aware of is that while Paul Ryan lost the vice presidency, he did win his seat. And I had, before he got nominated as vice president, I had reached out to him to have a conversation after the election, trying to find common ground with his budget. I am hoping that we can pursue that, and to see if we can't try to find some place for coming together. I think your point, Jean Ann, about Mr. McConnell is, especially with the deal that this idea of the grand bargain. Mitch McConnell, obviously, and Boehner, Cantor, Ryan, all those folks are going to be really key in trying to make that happen, and we're going to rely on folks on the ground to make a difference, to do the advocacy, to be the people in the offices that let them know that their rarefied view of we the people is unacceptable. So I think working carefully between us here and folks in the field will be key. Anybody want to add anything in on that?
I think one of the pressures that many people in both the House and Senate had in the last 2 years was the statement of McConnell that his main goal for the 2 years was to ensure that Barack Obama would be a one-term president. And I think that pressure is gone, and I'm hopeful that that is going to free up some of the people who felt that they had to follow them, that they had to follow McConnell and Boehner. I hope.
Well, we sent John Yarmuth back to you all.
Thank you. He's a good one.
Okay, anybody else have a question or a comment? You can do *7 to unmute your line. Okay, do we want to do?
Hello, this is Peggy in Kansas City.
Hi, Peggy.
Hello, I just want to thank you. Over 30 years ago, I was a network member, and life and other things took me away, and Nuns on the Bus have brought me back. Thank you for the hope. Thank you for your message. Thank you for the wonderful work you're doing. You are a source of just great joy and encouragement, and I think the gospel for all of us. So I especially appreciated Simone's words right now about claiming the fact what it means to be really pro-life and to use that and to talk about it and to not be afraid of it. So thank you very, very much, all of you.
And the beautiful thing is we'll spend all afternoon thanking you, and then you can thank us. What I discovered on the bus is when we thank each other for gifts we see in the other but aren't necessarily aware of our own gifts, isn't that a gorgeous thing about community? We see the giftedness of the other, and we can do this together. So thank you, and we're grateful for your gratitude to us. It keeps us going even when we're exhausted like today, so thank you.
And just to tell you, I bought my 87-year-old mother a membership in Network this last month because she is the person who rooted these values in me. So keep it up, please.
We shall. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else?
Yes.
This is Barbara Jennings in St. Louis.
Hey, Barbara. Congratulations on Claire McCaskill. Well done, Kansas City and St. Louis.
Yeah. And
Hi.
Peggy, it's good to hear from you. I wonder how Network is going to use that word, the jobs, and I hope that somehow, you know, in looking at the budget issues and all the cuts that Network keeps saying the word jobs, you know, that look at all the people that are going to lose jobs because Head Start will be cut or education in general or, you know, all of these things, even the terrible word defense. But I think that is the key to our economy and our taxes and getting people out of poverty.
Amen.
I'm glad you brought that up, Barbara. This is Marge. One of the things that we do work on does have to do with jobs, and one of the things I'm very aware of as we're doing anything related to the unemployment insurance issues and looking at jobs is that when they have made cuts in the budget so that they have cut discretionary programs, they are putting people out of work who work in state offices, who work in federal offices, who work in city offices and do a variety of things. It's social workers, it's all kinds of people. And what happens is instead of those people being able to feed into the revenue stream at both the state and federal level, they are then needing to get services out of the state and federal level. So it's a double whammy that when we make cuts to discretionary programs, we are raising the unemployment rate, and that became very, very clear in June of 11 when there were a lot of cuts, and it became critical again just a few months ago when they had another round of big cuts. And when they cut those funds, then the unemployment numbers either go up or they don't go down as much as they might have. So that's a really important point.
Good.
Hi, this is Elaine from Connecticut.
Hi.
Hi. I so appreciate everything that you've been doing, and I'm glad to be part of it. I was very happy to hear Obama mention the word climate change and climate issues when he gave his acceptance speech. Does Network have any plans to kind of move the conversation in the direction of what we need to do for our ecology and preservation of the earth?
I'll tell you, if we had about another $300,000, we'd have more staff and we could have a bigger program in that. The way we've had to do it, because you have to know we're 9 full-time people and we've got 3 associates, and lifting up the needs of those at the margins of our society have been our mission and top priority. So what we've tried to do is to integrate the climate issues into the other programs that we do. We know it's a key issue. We try to collaborate with the other folks in our various coalitions who have it as their focus and mission and to lift up their mission. But quite pragmatically, there's only so many hours in the day, and I'll tell you, we're running like mad on our little gerbil wheels to try to make a go of this one. So we're totally with you on the issue. I just think we at Network have limited capacity unless we can get some more money, which means more people. So at this point, we're going to try to keep the focus. And one of the things that we also know is the curse of the progressive is that we want to do it all and that everybody ought to do it all. We know that that's not possible here, and trying to keep our focus on those at the margins of our society and integrate into that the impact, because so much of the impact of unclean environments is in low-income communities, and trying to use that as the way into an integrated message is what we're going to be about. But good you raise it. It's really important, and we're very supportive of those who can keep it as their mission.
Thanks a lot.
You're welcome. Hope springs eternal.
Right.
Okay, we got a few more minutes. Is there anybody else that has a question or a comment?
Joellen Sprisa from Chicago, and our native son was just reelected president of the United States.
Yes. From the
I want to thank all of you for all that good work. So I don't want to keep going, but thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Joellen.
Okay, I think maybe we'll give Simone a minute for any closing remarks that you want.
Yeah, brief closing remarks, and then we'll end with a prayer. And the fact is that I've said often that the way forward is to come together around governance. And this morning, as we were talking about the effects of the election, I realized that elections really are won by dividing, by fighting, by being separate. But governance is all about coming together and finding the middle way forward. The amazing thing about a democracy is that democracy is about we the people governing ourselves. We can't be passive in the face of it, and we can't be aloof or removed from it. We need to be engaged. And so, network members, network associates, network hangers-on, please know that we're counting on you in this time to come together, find the way forward, be we the people, and really engage in this tough act of governing, solving these tough problems. Climate change, immigration, Medicaid expansion, lame duck, all of these issues. We've got a long way to go. But we the people can do it together. So we're counting on you. Now I'm going to pass this over to Mary Ellen at the other end of the table, and she's going to close us out with a prayer of gratitude. Okay, so it's Mary Ellen and Shannon. You're right. Yeah. I was afraid that's what that was. Okay, go for it.
Pack nothing. Bring only your determination to serve and your willingness to be free.
Surrender to the need of the time, to love justice and walk humbly with your God.
Set out in the dark. I will send fire to warm you and encourage you. I will be with you in the fire, and I will be with you in the cloud.
Stories you tell one another around the fires in the dark will make you strong and wise.
Some of you will be so changed by weathers and wanderings that even your closest friends will have to learn your features as though for the first time.
But sing songs as you go and hold close together. Continue to call each other by the names I've given you to help remember who you are. You will get where you are going by remembering who you are. Touch each other and keep telling the stories.
So remain true to this mystery. Pass on the whole story. Do not go back. I am with you now, and I am waiting for you.
And let the people say,
Amen.
Okay, thank you all for participating, and again, you can always email us at networkupdate@networklobby.org if you have any other questions, or you can call me, Jean, at 202-347-9797, extension 229, or my associate, Ashley, at extension
204.
204. We're your happy field coordinators and happy to help you. Okay, so thank you very much, and if I do get access to a recording, I will let you know about that. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.